I bought and tested 15 of the most popular chocolate whey protein powders on the market. And today I'm comparing them head to head in the ultimate chocolate protein tier list. Before we get into the actual head to head comparison, we gotta first go through the tiers. So here are the following tiers today. On the very top, chocolate royalty. This is reserved for the absolute kings and queens of chocolate protein. These are rich, smooth, and downright luxurious. The second one is Cocoa Dream. These chocolate proteins are also top tier, falling just shy of perfect. These are the products that will knock it out of the park in almost all categories, but fall short in one or two areas. Number 3, about middle of the pack, Mocha Maybe. This tier is for the middle of the road blends that get the job done, but leave you wondering if maybe there's something better out there. Number 4, Fudge Fumble. These protein powders have potential, but there are some major stumbles in regards to taste or texture that leave you wanting more. And the 5th and last tier at the very bottom, Bitter Bummer. The lowest of the low, the disappointing duds. These protein powders are chalky, clumpy, have awful aftertaste, and are just plain unappealing. Just a quick note, these rankings are based solely on taste, specifically the chocolate flavor. Keep in mind that a protein powder shouldn't be judged entirely by a single flavor. If you're looking for a more comprehensive review that covers ingredients, mixability, overall quality, check out my protein powder tier list video. I'll link that down below in the description box. First up to the plate is Transparent Labs Milk Chocolate, and we are going to be putting this protein at Cocoa Dream. Transparent Labs doesn't necessarily hold my #1 spot overall for flavor. However, when we put the Transparent Lab chocolate flavors, of which there are 2, head to head with the other protein powders that don't use any artificial flavors or sweeteners, nobody else even came close. My first method of comparing these protein powders was to mix them all with the same amount of water and do a blind taste test back to back. Actually, my first method of taste testing was to try 2 to 3 products per day throughout the day, but all the flavors started to mix together and I couldn't really differentiate between the brands as well. So I came up with the idea to mix up every single one at the same time so that I could try them side by side. I put all the naturally sweetened protein powders together in the same cohort. This included the 2 Transparent Lab flavors, Levels, Legion, Thorne, and the 2 flavors by Naked Whey. When I lined them up from best to worst during the blind taste test, the 2 top spots both went to Transparent Labs protein. For me, the dark chocolate flavor, which I'm actually going to be talking about next, has a richer, stronger taste than the milk chocolate that I have in front of me that I'm reviewing right now. And for this reason, this is why I dropped this flavor down to the 2nd tier. As far as the naturally flavored options are concerned, however, both flavors by Transparent Labs do a great job. Transparent Labs milk chocolate had great mixability with a smooth, creamy texture, no clumps or chalkiness at all when it comes to this protein. The second protein up to bat is going to be the Transparent Labs grass-fed whey protein isolate, of course, but this is the dark chocolate. And we are going to be put this protein at the tier chocolate royalty. When it comes to the naturally sweetened and flavored proteins, Transparent Labs really left the other products behind. Whether the dark chocolate or the milk chocolate flavors take the top spot for you could come down literally to a matter of opinion. The milk chocolate was slightly sweeter, but I found it had less overall flavor than the dark chocolate. Since I pitted them head to head mixed with just water, dark chocolate came out on top for me, taking the chocolate royalty tier. If you plan to use the protein powder for smoothies, oatmeal, or baking, then you might prefer the lighter taste of the milk chocolate. Like its milk chocolate counterpart, the dark chocolate protein powder by Transparent Labs mixed easily and entirely with no clumps or chalkiness. This is significant because when testing the other naturally flavored proteins, a constant between them was a more gritty or chalky texture. This was especially prominent with the Naked Whey products. Not only did the Transparent Lab protein top the charts for taste and mixability, but when we combine this with the Transparent Labs' reputation for high quality ingredients and testing standards, they're a company you can feel confident investing your money in. Now, before I move on to the next batch of proteins, just want to let you all know that any of the proteins that I talk about today, specifically 15 of them, will be linked down below in the description box and pinned comment for you to buy. The third is Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard Whey Protein in the double rich chocolate flavor, and we are putting it at Fudge Fumble. I never make a ton of friends when I give my opinion on the ON Gold Standard Whey Protein. This protein is incredibly popular, due mainly to part of the fact that the company ON has been around for decades and set up for global distribution, meaning that people across the world can access their products. So very smart on them. Optimum Nutrition's quality is good. I am not trying to say otherwise. I just find its taste and mixability to be incredibly subpar, especially when compared to similar products on the market, like many found on this list. The flavor is very bland, especially when mixed with just water. Gold standard whey was one of the proteins that had the worst mixability. When using a traditional shaker cup, there were a lot of clumps and leftover residue along the side of the cup, making for an overall unpleasant drinking experience. If I were in a bind, or this was the only protein powder I had access to, it's not so bad that I would throw it away, but definitely leaves me wanting more. The one big advantage I will give 𝗕𝗏 is that, as I briefly mentioned, there have been some of the best global distribution with their products available to purchase in more than 100 countries. They also have a wide variety of sizes to suit up to different budgets, whether you want to buy in very small quantities at a time or you want to invest in bulk sizes to get the lowest cost per serving. The next one up to the plate is 𝗙𝗂𝗋𝗆 Select Protein Chocolate Truffle Flavor, and I'm also going to be putting this one at Fudge Fumble. This was honestly such a shock to me. I am glad I did this taste test blind because I love so many of the 𝗙𝗋𝗆 flavors. I would have been biased in favor of this protein powder and probably would have ranked it higher. This was one of my least favorite proteins when they were all compared head to head. It tasted extremely bitter, so much so that I struggled to taste the chocolate flavor through the bitterness. I tried several times to drink it, but I struggled to take more than a small sip at a time. I was shocked to turn the cup over and discover that it was 𝗙𝗋𝗆. Because I absolutely love so many of their flavors, cake pop and cookies and cream, they are staples in my supplement cupboard. 𝗙𝗋𝗆 also had extremely thick and it had a very gritty texture. As a quick note, in order to compare them more accurately, I mixed every product with the same 6 ounces of water. Since 𝗙𝗋𝗆 has some casein protein in its formula, which is a slower digesting type of protein that mixes up thicker than whey, it's expected that this will have a thicker texture. When you mix it with slightly more water, closer to 8 ounces, the texture balances out. It's still thick, but much less gritty. I sampled this one on separate days on its own rather than compared to head with other products, and it definitely tasted better, but the bitter undertones were still really prominent. Unfortunately, the 𝗙𝗋𝗆 chocolate truffle is a hard sell for me overall. Next protein up to the plate is Dymatize ISO 100, and we are putting it at chocolate royalty. Dymatize ISO 100 took the #1 spot for flavor and mixability in my head-to-head rankings. It dissolved extremely well and made for a really pleasant drinking experience. It had a fairly bold taste without being too sweet. This was surprising for me since a lot of the Dymatize ISO 100 flavors are notoriously sweet. As a hydrolyzed isolate, this protein powder has also been filtered to remove the excess lactose, which makes this a good option for individuals with lactose sensitivities. When it came to the protein powders that ranked highest for taste, ISO 100, Nutricost, and MyProtein, deciding which ones made it all the way up to the chocolate royalty came down to secondary flavors. All of these top ranking proteins are third-party tested, so we can be confident that all products are made with high quality ingredients and no amino acid spiking. The fact that Dymatize ISO 100 is made with hydrolyzed isolate and is therefore virtually lactose free makes it more suitable for a wider audience, pushing it into our top tier. I really couldn't find anything to dislike about this protein, and I'm kicking myself a little bit for having not tried this chocolate flavor sooner. Next protein up to the plate is the Naked Whey chocolate flavor, and we are putting this one at bitter bummer. I appreciate what Naked does with their products and keeping everything as natural, organic, and minimal as possible, but I just can't bring myself to drink this one. Despite having coconut sugar and 8 grams of carbs, which is 5 grams of sugar per serving, it doesn't have any sweetness and it has very little taste. It's bland, bitter, and all around just too unappealing. In my blind taste head notes, I'd actually written down really bad, no flavor, yuck. It's expected that if you pair a minimalistic, all-natural protein powder against those that use artificial flavors and sweeteners or additives like lecithins to improve the mixability, there will be some differences in overall flavor and texture. To try to mitigate this, I compared all the naturally flavored products against each other in a separate taste test. Even when compared to the other natural protein powders like Legion, Transparent Labs, and Levels, the Naked Whey had a noticeably bad taste. The mixability was also poor, and this product expanded so much when I shook it that it was the only brand that I had to bring out extra cups for. All the other proteins dissolved enough in 6 ounces of water to fit nicely into my glasses. Both Naked Whey flavors needed extra glasses brought out because they got really frothy and thick when I shook them up. I tried several times to give this protein powder a go, and even when tested on its own, away from the blind taste test, it was my second least favorite protein powder. I do try to be fair in my assessments, so in my attempt to find a purpose for everybody, I do think that Naked Whey has a great company, philosophy, and manufactures high quality products. Next one up to the the plate is also Naked Whey, but it is the double chocolate, and we are also putting this one at Bitter Bummer. There's not really much more to say here than it wasn't just about the Naked Whey chocolate flavor. The Naked Whey double chocolate flavor holds all the same complaints for me that the other flavor does, except that this one tasted extremely sour and bitter. It was only after tasting this double chocolate flavor that I moved the chocolate Naked Whey flavor out of my personal lowest ranking. The double chocolate definitely has a darker chocolate flavor, but the sour and bitteriness made the regular chocolate flavor more sweet and palatable in comparison. Next one up to the plate is Legion Whey Protein Powder, and this one is the Dutch chocolate flavor, and we are putting this one at 𝗕𝗵cie. On a scale of naturally flavored chocolate protein powders, Legion falls unremarkably in the middle. When compared to Naked Whey, Legion had a decent flavor and a good amount of sweetness. Compared to the two transparent lab flavors, it fell a bit short. I did write down that Legion Dutch chocolate protein had a weird, interesting aftertaste, one that was almost like a chemically kind of taste. It was also only after learning that this was Legion protein that I had an aha moment and went back to read the notes for my in-depth Legion review. I tested the cinnamon cereal way back then, and had that time I also remarked that there was a distinctively chemical aftertaste. This aftertaste seems to be a common thread through their protein flavors. Legion did have good mixability with little to no clumps or chalky texture, which can be a common issue with more natural protein powders. As far as high quality, naturally flavored chocolate protein powders go, Legion falls squarely in the middle of the pack just for me. Next up to the plate is IsoPure Dutch chocolate, and we are putting this one at 𝗕𝗵cie. This is by far the weirdest experience I've had in my entire chocolate testing experience. When I tested IsoPure Dutch chocolate on its own for my in-depth review, I loved it. I ranked it 4 out of 5 for taste and mixability, and remarked that it had a good rich taste, and that it did have a slightly gritty texture when mixed with water, but this was mitigated when I added it to milk. When I had it in the lineup for the head-to-head taste test though, I actually did like a spit take, so I actually spit this out a few times in my kitchen sink. I tried a few others and then came back to this one, and then again had the same result. I have no idea which ingredients were interacting with the other protein flavors, but compared to the other chocolate proteins, this one tasted extremely sour. IsoPure does have an added vitamin and mineral blend, so maybe there is something within the formula that was reacting with taste buds and that the other protein flavors to elicit such a strong reaction. Maybe something similar to the reaction of toothpaste and orange juice, I'm not sure. I also thought that maybe this was a bad batch, or maybe something was faulty with this particular tub of Dutch chocolate. So I tried it the following day on its own, and it tasted just fine. A decently rich chocolatey taste, though now that my brain was primed to perceive this flavor as sour, I could definitely pick out some very subtle sour notes. Because of this extremely bizarre experience, I'm left to give this product a big shrug and throw it right in the middle of the pack. Next up to the plate is going to be MyProtein Impact Whey, which is in the chocolate brownie flavor. And we are putting this one at chocolate royalty. This was one of my favorite chocolate proteins for its rich taste, smooth texture, and amazing mixability. Even when mixed with just water, the chocolate flavor comes through incredibly strong. I took this one with me when I went traveling on a weekend road trip because the bag was very easy, as you can see right here. It doesn't take up too much space, and it ended up being a savior as a way to sweeten and flavor my coffee when I forgot to grab a creamer to have it at the Airbnb. I mixed it easily into my coffee with just a spoon or fork and just stirred it in. I get nervous traveling with protein powder in bags instead of plastic tubs. I'm always concerned that the bags will come open and cause a massive mess. I've had the opportunity to test MyProtein Impact Whey protein several times, and they haven't let me down yet. I'd rather prefer this than the big bulky tub. The only potential downside is that the MyProtein chocolate brownie might be too sweet for some palates. If you like a more toned down flavor, then opt for the Transparent Labs milk chocolate instead. Next protein up to the plate is Rule 1 protein in the chocolate fudge flavor. And we're personally putting this flavor at 𝗕𝗵cie. Rule 1 isolate chocolate fudge testing was an experience similar to PE science, so I was really glad that I opted to go for a blind taste test method. By that I mean I have used Rule 1 proteins, both the whey and the isolate blends, for years. There are a lot of Rule 1 protein flavors that I already love, like cafe mocha and orange creamsicle. As a longtime fan of Rule 1 proteins, I would have been more likely to place this one higher up in the rankings if I knew what it was. Rule 1 ended up being the first protein powder that I tested in my blind lineup. I wasn't disappointed. It has a nice rich chocolate flavor. I thought it would rank really highly on the list until I shared trying the other proteins. As I sampled other brands like the Nutricost and the Dymatize, Rule 1 fell a little further down in the rankings as the flavor fell a bit flat compared to others. When I tested this one on its own at a later date, it had an undeniable sweetness to it. If I had to put a label to it, I would say it has an almost fruity quality to it. Rule 1 isolate has a great mixability and is a good option for individuals looking for a more mild flavor, but there are definitely more desirable flavors out there. The next protein up to the plate is going to be Thorne Whey Protein Isolate, and this is just in the plain chocolate flavor. And we are putting this one at the mocha maybe tier list. Thorne protein powder is another one of those brands where if I had never tried another chocolate protein, I would probably be quite satisfied. The company is reputable for their high quality standards, and they have one of the highest quality third-party testing certifications called NSF, which make this a viable option for the most elite athletes who undergo drug testing. Having tested this protein powder side by side against the other natural chocolate proteins, I felt like this one was a quite tasteless and had a bitter of sour note to it. Where a lot of products fall right into mocha maybe because they're middle of the road for everywhere, Thorne is kind of unique in that it falls in the middle category because it has really extreme pros and cons, and the average winds up in the middle. For example, Thorne is one of the most expensive whey protein powders on the market at $2.17 per scoop, offering 21 grams of protein. Other high quality third-party tested brands like Transparent Labs offer better value with a cost of $2 per serving and 28 grams of protein. Thorne might be out of budget for some consumers, whereas others might have the means and appreciation for a company that uses the highest quality certifications and has additional features like health tests and personalized supplement bundles. Thorne is not set up for distribution the way that brands like ON or Transparent Labs are. As a result, this product might not be available for you. I, for instance, cannot purchase Thorne products directly from the website to my home country. I initially put this product into the Fudge fumble for that reason, but I was feeling generous in my revision and bumped it up a tier. Next one up to the plate is Nutricost Whey Protein Isolate in the milk chocolate, and we are putting this one at chocolate royalty tier. It should come as no surprise if you've watched this video this far. Nutricost holds up the top spot for me, hands down. If you're surprised, I was too. Looking at the Nutricost tub and website, they definitely look like a budget brand and don't have the flashy branding that a lot of other supplement companies have. I actually did a double take when I revealed my blind taste test results to make sure I had the correct cup. Now, Nutricost Chocolate had a great flavor and great mixability. It is definitely a sweeter chocolate, but I found that it had a really great flavor come through, which balanced out the sweetness. It mixed well with a nice creamy texture and no clumps or chalky residue. Nutricost Isolate has 30 grams of protein per scoop, more than anyone else on this list at the lowest cost per serving, which makes this a win-win-win-win-win solution. Nutricost does not have the more expensive third-party testing certifications that other top-tier brands do, but they do guarantee that their products are independently third-party tested, which is great. These results are not publicly displayed on the website, but the company will send the testing reports if you reach out to their customer service team. In-depth Nutricost Whey Isolate review coming soon for all you guys. The next big boy on the list is the Levels, and this is going to be in the double chocolate flavor. We are putting this one at Fudge fumble. I had seen Levels a lot prior to testing through sponsored ads that frequently popped up on my web browser. I was really excited to try it for this reason, but to be honest, it fell a bit flat for me. This protein is definitely a dark chocolate variety, which combined with a natural flavoring makes for a more bitter tasting product when compared to other sweetener milk chocolate varieties. I also found this one to have a very gritty texture, which isn't necessarily uncommon with brands who focus on the all natural kind of ingredient lists. These brands will often forego ingredients like lecithins and gums, which can improve the mixability and mouthfeel of the protein powders. Without these ingredients, we are sometimes left with a more grainy or gritty texture. If you are sensitive to texture, then this probably isn't the protein powder for you. I know I personally found myself reaching for Transparent Labs for my naturally flavored option in place of Levels. Thorne and Naked Whey because of the bitter texture. I know I personally found myself reaching for Transparent Labs for my naturally flavored option in place of Levels, Thorne, and Naked Whey because of the better texture. If you want to avoid any added ingredients like lecithin or gums, then I recommend Levels as the next best all-natural option over Thorne and Naked Whey because of the less expensive cost and better taste, respectfully. In-depth Levels whey protein review coming soon for you all on the 𝗕𝗂𝗃 channel. And the last chocolate protein, which happens to come in milk chocolate, is the MuscleTech NitroTech. And we are putting this one at the tier Mocha Maybe. MuscleTech NitroTech is one of the protein powders I mentioned where everything about it falls just meh, right in the middle. It had a very thick, creamy texture, which isn't necessarily good or bad. It wasn't chalky or gritty, but it was noticeably thicker than the majority of the other isolate proteins I tested. This can be easily thinned out by just adding a little bit more water, or actually just adding water instead of a milk substitute or milk, but that would be diluting the flavor. This part all comes down to personal preference. As for the flavor, my initial notes read, it's not awful, it's not fantastic. This protein powder found itself almost smack in the middle of the blind taste test. It wasn't as good as the Nutricost or the MyProtein, but it was significantly better than the 𝗕𝗵𝗵𝗺, Science, and IsoPure. NitroTech had a good chocolate taste without being terribly sweet. One aspect of NitroTech that is unique compared to the other protein powders is that it has 3 grams of creatine monohydrate per scoop. In short, creatine monohydrate is one of the most clinically researched sports supplements with a proven track record for increasing muscle strength and has more recently been proven to potentially benefit cognitive and mental health. A typical dose for creatine falls anywhere between 3 to 5 grams daily, depending on your body mass and your weight. For most healthy adults, 1 scoop of NitroTech will also provide a fully daily dose of creatine monohydrate. You're getting best of both worlds, the protein and the creatine in 1 scoop. For this reason, I put NitroTech under the Mocha Maybe tier, but with a nice little asterisk because if we are judging this protein purely on its chocolate experience, it deserves to stay in the middle of the pack. If we are assessing the protein on secondary and tertiary qualities, however, then the additional benefits of NitroTech from the creatine monohydrate make this protein powder deserving of being in the Cocoa Dream tier. In-depth review of the NitroTech whey protein review coming again, of course, to 𝗕𝗂𝗃.com's YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it, you're also going to enjoy watching my ultimate protein powder tier list video where I tested 22 different brands. Click up here in this corner to watch that video next. I'll also link it down below in the description box. I hope you all have a great day today, and I'll see you next time.